time. Won't that be exciting? Who's here for the first time? Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Annie Moran's here for the first time. It's a lie. Okay, well, we start the meetings with a microphone that might be dying, with a very raucous session of announcements. So if you're out there and you have an announcement, get ready. Who would like to start? Anyone? Yes, go ahead.
Tomorrow, Coach Pink NYC is having an event at a yacht at Bay Ridge, and I just want to let everybody know. It's from 3 to 7.
3 to 7, Bay Ridge Yacht. Can we get more information someplace if we needed it?
Yes, on their Instagram.
Code Pink Instagram.
Okay, yes.
Great. Anybody else? Yeah, Anna Marie.
A few people at Fordham are putting on a women's conference, a Catholic women's conference on March 8th at 12:30. All are welcome. If you want more details, let me know.
You'll be sending an email, I hope, to the Catholic Worker women about that. Great. Okay. Anyone else? Other announcements? Bill Griffin?
There's a Yemen Vigil tomorrow, Saturday, from 11 to 12, in front of the George Washington statue, as it has been going on for 7 or 8 years. And silent vigil, protesting these wars that are afflicting all humanity, and we are protesting and calling for peace and reconciliation and nonviolence. All are welcome. And 11 to 12, 14th Street, in front of the George Washington statue.
And that's pretty much every Saturday, so if you can't make it tomorrow, you can come another time.
Also, there is the Dorothy Day's editorial after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We reprinted some, and it's an inspiration for us today who are struggling against the threat of nuclear war, which is hanging over all of us. And it's from 1945, and it's very inspirational and extraordinary. She was one of the few voices to be. It was a hard time. The war had been ended, but at what cost and in what manner? And these moral questions, Dorothy was aware of them and asked them in September of '45. Please read it.
Bill is our master of propaganda, and he did not fail us tonight. Thank you, Bill. Any other announcements, Anthony?
Yeah, I have no announcements tonight. I thought I'd announce. March 3rd, Monday, through March 7th, Friday, every day, whoever is free and wants to, come to the United Nations. There'll be some banners there. Bring a sign. It's the whole week is for the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, which most of the people in this room are involved with over the past 4 years. But come out and support. The UN is carrying on this negotiations and supporting this treaty the whole week, and it'd be great to see whoever's free coming there, standing in solidarity, supporting the work going on inside. We appreciate it.
There's a flyer talking about learning about nonviolent tactics in preparation for this
There'll be a
demonstration.
nonviolence training here at Mary House. That's right.
The date and times are
On Tuesday.
on the table there, next to Dorothy's statement.
And the major action will be on Wednesday at noon up at the U.S. mission to the UN, similar to what's happened the past couple of years. But you'll have to wait till Tuesday to find out exactly what's being planned.
What date is that, Bill?
The 5th, it's Ash Wednesday.
Okay. Any other announcements? Anyone? Anyone? No? Okay, well, I am not going to introduce our whole panel because I think they're going to introduce themselves a little bit, but these are all beloved friends, some new and some older, of the Catholic Worker, and they have all traveled to Palestine in the last 6 months, or, yeah, roughly, right? So it is, please welcome our esteemed panel.
Hi. My name is Mark Colville. I'm from the Amistad Catholic Worker in New Haven, Connecticut.
I'm Sunita Viswanath, very happy to be here. I'm with Hindus for Human Rights.
And I'm Beth Brockman from Durham, North Carolina.
And Bill Ofenloch from right around here.
So what the four of us have in common, at least one thing in common, is not only do we all travel to Palestine within the past 6 months, but we did so with a very wonderful organization called Sabil. And I wanted to just kind of frame our comments tonight about the experience by just explaining a little of what Sabil is. People have heard of this organization? Yeah. Okay. So the Arabic word means the way, as far as I know, and of course it's a center of liberation theology that's located in East Jerusalem in the West Bank, and they've been trying to practice liberation theology from a Christian and Palestinian perspective for many years now. When I say it's a center of liberation theology, what I mean by that, and there's liberation theology from a Palestinian perspective. It's kind of important to name a few points about that, so that some of what we did there and what Sabil does is more contextualized. Things about liberation theology from a Palestinian perspective. It's about inclusivity, about nonviolence, about rejecting the empire as a model for civilization or for nation states. It's about, most of all, it centers on the issues of land and dispossession. Okay, and a few things that arise from that perspective. One is that when we're talking about land and dispossession, they've come to understand that what they're experiencing as a people in Palestine is the denial of personhood as a means to the denial of land and place. And that's sort of, it's kind of rooted biblically in the sense that, throughout all of, biblical history, a dwelling place has been, God's promise and the hope of the people, right? And so they're experiencing that. And a couple of interesting things that I found out from listening to Omar, who is the leader of our delegation, is that first of all, from their perspective, the Exodus story is not a narrative of liberation for them. The Exodus story is not a liberation story from a Palestinian perspective. And that is not only because of recent history, but because of the way, basically the way Christians and Zionism has arisen, and not only, it's not only Zionism, but the fact that our interpretation of these stories is rooted, it's part of the root of Palestinian oppression at this point. Okay, so there's that. Omar even said, what we really need is to be liberated from religion. Okay, and to follow Jesus in that context is to liberate oneself from religion. And as a good example of that, I'll pass it on in a minute, but the story that really stuck with me that Omar told, he was kind of like a stand-up comic, really. He must have a second career. He's a very funny man and a storyteller. And it was a very tense experience, and in many ways, witnessed a lot of brutality and all. And he managed to keep it light. Anyway, he mentioned on one of the trips, one of our bus trips, the story of the wisdom of Solomon. You know, it comes from 1 Kings 3:16 to 28. I looked it up. Anyway, people might be familiar with that story about the wisdom of Solomon, where two women are in dispute about who's the mother of this infant child. So they bring the child before Solomon, and he takes out his sword and orders that the baby be split in half, and that each mother be given half a baby. And so, of course, as the story goes, the real mother then comes forward and says, give the child to the other person. And so that's how they kind of sorted that out. And Omar was talking about that story, and he said, you know, we're talking about, you know, who has a right, does Israel have a right to exist, and blah, 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 you know, who does the land belong to? Do Palestinians believe that the land belongs to them? And Omar's response was, the land, we are about inclusivity. Palestinians are about inclusivity, and the land belongs to those who refuse to split the baby. So that, in a nutshell, is what is kind of the context of Palestinian liberation theology that we were trying to walk with through this trip. And it was all about accompaniment and defense of people who are trying to defend themselves and their land and their relationship to the land. Thanks.
I'm really blessed to be in this space for two reasons, actually. First of all, I want to grow up and be Dorothy Day. And so the fact that she lived and worked here, you know, it's really, gives me shivers. But I just learned that this used to be the 3rd Street Music School, and my oldest son, who turned 30 yesterday, went to the 3rd Street Music School when he was 2, but not in this location, somewhere else nearby. Right, so I just feel just very lucky and happy to be here, and feel privileged to have this opportunity to share about our trip. It was end of August, early September, and yeah, I mean, Hindus for Human Rights is 5 years old. It turned 5 in the summer, so it was just 5 at the time that we went. And when we created Hindus for Human Rights, it was in deep conversation with a very close Muslim partner, Indian American Muslim Council, and Jewish Voice for Peace. And JVP, and specifically Rabbi Alyssa Wise, who is one of the people that built JVP to be what it is today, and then went on to, in the past year and a half, to build Rabbis for Ceasefire. She was the person who talked with me about Hinduism. I mean, actually, just in the past couple of days, there's a video presentation that she gave. It's on Middle East Eye, talking about how Judaism is thousands of years old, Zionism is like 100 years old, and there's no way that, you know, Judaism isn't going to win this this battle. And that was the conversation we were having about the same thing is happening in the Hindu fold, where you have Hinduism, which is an amalgam of traditions thousands of years old, and then you have this 100-year-old ideology, Hindutva, or Hindu nationalism, which is the public voice of Hinduism today. And if you step out as a Hindu, not agreeing with Hindutva, you are anti-Hindu, you're anti-India, you're all these things. And we were talking about, this is before starting Hindus for Human Rights, these parallels between Zionism and Hindutva, and how absolutely crazy it is that India, which was always, you know, solidly with Palestine. In fact, Nehru, India had been partitioned, and Nehru voted against the partition of Palestine. I mean, there's not in our imagination the idea that India would be what it is today, standing with Netanyahu, sending human beings to replace the workers and the people that are leaving, sending bombs. And here in this country, where in the past year you had student encampments, Hindu right-wing organizations standing with the Zionist organizations, calling them anti-Semitic, this was not in our imagination, and this is what is happening. So at the start, when we started Hindus for Human Rights, we not only did the founding of Hindus for Human Rights in deep dialogue with our anti-Zionist Jewish friends, Alyssa and Ari, another colleague, trained us, facilitated our strategic planning retreat. So this is all, Alyssa would say, one of the best things that could come out of all the trials and tribulations of the past, I don't know how old JVP is, I should know, like 25 years or whatever, should be that I can train Hindus fighting Hindutva. So that's a little bit about where HFHR started. We are 5 years old. We are now quite well known in India. We are a strident organization. We've made enemies of the Indian government. They come after us personally. Many of our colleagues cannot get into India very easily. Our track record is sort of blazing, and the idea of solidarity with Palestine was there, as I say, from the start. And then you have, this recent nightmare chapter starting October 7th, 2023. So unlike so many nonprofit organizations, supposedly progressive, supposedly interfaith, etc., which, including somewhere I'm involved, I'm on the board of Amnesty USA, and Amnesty USA has had a hard time. So many of the organizations that I work with have been paralyzed, stymied, split, tortured with what to do since October 7th, 2023. And I am so, so grateful and relieved that Hindus for Human Rights wasn't one of those organizations. And starting before October 7th, after, there was never a time where anyone in our organization suggested that we wouldn't immediately be pro-ceasefire, hesitate to use the word genocide, none of this. And so Hindus for Human Rights and Sarita Dharma stand for the truth, for nonviolence, for justice, and that there's no ifs or buts. And so when Alyssa organized, we were doing interfaith, actually we were doing interfaith stuff with them anyway, and I was asking, is there going to be an interfaith delegation to Palestine? And then I saw in the newspaper that she went on a rabbi's trip to Palestine, and she was actually arrested. You might have seen it. She was sort of dragged away at the border where we did an action. They had gone, Rabbis for Ceasefire had gone to try and deliver aid and were, arrested there. So I said, hey, you went, you didn't take us with you. So she did, soon after that, organize Rabbis for Ceasefire and Christians for Ceasefire. The two organizations were organizing delegations to go to the West Bank. And then Omar was the one, of Seville was the one who was working with both groups, and he had this brilliant idea, why don't you come together? It's more inclusive, and then because it was the rabbis and the Christians, they opened it up to interfaith, and so I was the Hindu on the group, and I brought my one very wonderful Buddhist friend. So we were usually in the back of the bus, being told to be quiet. And it was a life-transforming trip because, for any of us who've been engaged in pro-Palestinian thought and information and advocacy, we know in our heads what's going on, but there is really nothing like setting your foot on the ground and seeing with your eyes. I could never have read and understood this feeling of this wall that is always there. You always know where it is. Things like that, the road, just the way being in the West Bank versus the couple of days when we went to Jaffa and Tel Aviv, and just, it's literally next to each other, and it's like another world. These things we couldn't have known without being there. And then, the stories of the people and the love of the people that greeted us. I want to go back. I will never forget it. My husband is a secular anti-Zionist Jew, and he should have been there with me, and we have to make that trip together. We will tell you more about all the ways in which we have been deeply moved and transformed by this trip. I'll let my sister Beth.
Thanks, Sunita.